Hello friends, I am Sam from the Shenzhen Lei Shili Maintenance Service Team. Welcome to today's sharing. Last time we covered safety protection devices. Today we move to another dimension of safety, fire protection. Think about what's special about an ESFR tall racks, densely packed goods, narrow aisles. If a fire starts, it spreads extremely fast, and firefighters can hardly get in to fight it. So, an ESFR must have a comprehensive fire system, and those systems must be maintained and tested regularly. Today we'll systematically cover the ESFR fire system, what equipment there is, how to maintain it, and how to run interlock tests. 4 learning goals today. First, understand the full makeup of the ESFR fire system, what subsystems there are and what each does. Second, master the daily maintenance methods and intervals for key devices like detectors and suppression equipment. Third, master the standard interlock test procedure. Note that the fire system doesn't work in isolation. Once a detector alarms, it must interlock to stop machines, start suppression and sound the alarm, and that interlock chain must be tested regularly. Fourth, understand the compliance requirements and record keeping for fire maintenance. The ESFR fire system has 5 subsystems. First, fire detection, smoke, heat, and flame detectors and the like, for early detection. Next, suppression. Most commonly the ESFR sprinkler system, that is early suppression fast response heads, mounted above the racks, with high flow directed at the seat of the fire. Gas suppression is mainly for electrical and control rooms. The alarm system notifies people to evacuate. The smoke control system limits smoke spread. Finally, the interlock control system is the brain of the whole thing. On a detector signal, it automatically executes stopping machines, suppression, and alarms. Fire alarm maintenance has 2 parts. On the left, you see the daily checks of the fire alarm control panel. What should the duty staff look at each day? Is the power LED steady green? Is the fault LED off? Is the supervisory LED off? Monthly, actively test the buzzer and check the printer and display for abnormal messages. On the right, testing the manual call points and sounders. Call points come as break glass or resettable types. Spot check at least 10% of them monthly. Press them and confirm the panel receives the signal with the correct zone shown. Test sounders monthly. At least 85 dB at 1 meter. Know the common faults. For example, if a button is pressed but the panel doesn't receive it, it's usually a wiring problem. There are 4 main detector types. The smoke detector is the most used in an ESFR. Clean its insect mesh quarterly and function test it yearly with a smoke generator. The heat detector suits dusty areas and is less prone to false alarms. The flame detector responds fast. The aspirating detector can sense trace amounts of smoke, suited to high-value warehouses. What's the core of maintenance? Cleaning. Dust is the top cause of false alarms. Vacuum or soft brush them quarterly. Function test all detectors at least once a year. Note that in Vietnam's high humidity, condensation can form inside detectors, so increase the cleaning frequency. Now, suppression system maintenance. The ESFR sprinkler is the main means in an ESFR. The key points: 1. Monthly check that heads aren't obstructed. Goods on the racks must not block them. The most common problem. 2. The water main valves must stay open and be locked and tagged. 3. Monthly check the network pressure and pump set function. Gas suppression is mainly for electrical and control rooms. Monthly check the cylinder pressure and nozzles. The control panel with no fault lamp is normal. A special note: gas suppression maintenance must be done only by certified personnel, as handling and replacing cylinders carries safety risk. The smoke control system is key to limiting smoke spread during a fire. On the left, the check items for the 4 components. Function test the exhaust fan monthly. With a manual start-stop, checking running sound and vibration, and mind the bearing lubrication and belt tension. Cycle the smoke's fire damper electrically each quarter. It must act within 10 seconds with correct position feedback. Check the smoke baffle quarterly. Travel test motorized baffles monthly. Test the makeup air system in step with the exhaust system to ensure air supply during smoke extraction. On the right, the test cycle. Test fans monthly, dampers and baffles quarterly. A full interlock test semi-annually, and a third-party airflow test yearly. Keep test records for at least 3 years. 3 years, ERI. Remember that. Extinguishers are the first line of defense in the early stage of a fire. On the left, the extinguisher checklist. What to check monthly. Is the gauge needle in the green? Are the pin and seal intact? Is the nozzle clear? Is the body free of serious rust? CO kit pushers also need monthly weighing or charge if the weight drops more than 10%. Note that ABC dry powder and CO kit pushers have different ratings. On the right, the hydrant cabinet check. Is the cabinet intact? Is the hose free of mold or damage? Is the nozzle coupling undeformed? Does the reel turn freely? Every 6 months, do an actual flow test. Open the valve, flow water, and check the network pressure, and that the hose doesn't leak. Now the fire interlock test procedure. In 4 steps. Step 1. Preparation. Notify everyone. Confirm the panel is in auto, and clear the test area. Step 2. Trigger. Use a smoke generator on a smoke detector or press a manual call point. Step 3 is the most critical. Verify the interlock actions. Do the sounders strobes activate? Is non-fire power cut? Do the fire dampers close? Do the exhaust fans start? Do the stacker and conveyor stop? Does the sprinkler pump start? Does the gas release enter its delay countdown? Step 4. Reset and verify. After resetting the panel, confirm all interlock devices recover. The pass criterion is that all devices act correctly within 10 seconds of the trigger. Run the interlock test at least twice a year. No slacking on this. The fire system maintenance plan is in 6 tiers by frequency. Daily, duty staff check the panel for faults or alarms. Weekly, the pump set runs its automatic self-test. Monthly, check the sprinkler heads, network pressure, and extinguishers. Quarterly, clean the detectors, and test the fire dampers and fire phone. Every 6 months, run a full interlock test, covering a different zone each time, so all zones are tested across the year. Yearly, have a third-party body do a full inspection. All maintenance records must be kept for at least 3 years for inspection by the fire authority. Fire drills come in 3 types. The tabletop drill, quarterly, has managers and team leads walk through the evacuation in a meeting room, good for new hire training. The partial drill, semi-annually, has staff of a specific area do a live evacuation and extinguisher practice, and can be combined with the interlock test. The full drill, at least once a year, involves everyone simulating a real fire scenario. On the right, evacuation plan points. Every area must have a route map posted, with escape routes marked by green arrows. Assembly points are in outdoor safe areas. Each area has a fixed one that must never be blocked by vehicles or goods. After reaching the assembly point, do a roll call immediately and report any missing person. Each drill should record the total evacuation time, assess problems and follow up on improvements. Now Vietnam's fire regulations and compliance points, OT, essential knowledge for doing fire maintenance in Vietnam. The core laws are the Law on Fire Prevention and Fighting 2001, amended 2013, with implementing Decree 136/2020 ND. As a warehouse facility, an AS/ must obtain a fire acceptance certificate before it can be used. The fire system must be inspected annually by a licensed third party. All maintenance records must be kept for at least 3 years. The compliance checklist should be self-audited quarterly, 14 items, from the acceptance certificate and annual inspection report to daily logs and the semi-annual interlock test reports. Fix any finding immediately and file the record. How heavy are the penalties? Using a site without the certificate can be fined up to 500 million VND. Here's a real interlock test case. An AS/ ran its semi-annual fire interlock test. After triggering a detector, most interlocks worked, but stacker OFF3 didn't stop. What did the investigation find? The fire signal had reached the stacker's control cabinet, but an interposing relay had burnt out, and the signal couldn't reach the PLC. Note that this relay had never been maintained, and nothing else would reveal it had failed, only an interlock test could. So the interlock test is not a formality? It can genuinely save lives at the critical moment. Had they skipped it, in a real fire a still running stacker would have worsened the spread. Finally, let's recap today's key points, in 6 lines. 1. None of the 5 fire subsystems can be missing. 2. Detector cleaning comes first. Dust causes false or missed alarms. 3. Goods must not block the sprinkler heads. Detectors, check monthly. 4. Run the interlock test at least twice a year. All devices must act within 10 seconds. 5. Keep maintenance records for over 3 years. 6. Include the fire interlock interface, relays and other key parts in routine checks. Got all 6. That's it for today. We covered the 5 fire subsystems of an AS/fire alarm system maintenance, fire detector maintenance, the key points of ESFR sprinkler and gas suppression, smoke control maintenance, extinguisher and hydrant maintenance, the 4-step interlock test procedure, and the case where an interlock test caught a stacker that wouldn't stop. Next episode is the finale of this series, WMS/WCS data consistency checking and exception handling. Thanks everyone, see you next time. Finally, let me slip in a little ad. If you don't mind, feel free to take note. Our Lasili Vietnam team specializes in local logistics automation equipment maintenance. We're a fully professional local service team, available on call. If you have equipment maintenance needs, feel free to reach out to us.